Welcome to another episode of The Profile in 2023. In the hot seat tonight, well, the comfy chair.
The comfy chair.
Is it comfy, Graham?
It's very comfy.
Good. This is Mr. Graham Owens, a really good friend of mine, and I've known Graham for a long time. Thanks for coming in, Graham.
Pleasure, guys.
Really nice to talk to you. So, I've got to ask you where you were born.
Liverpool in England.
Wow, Scouser. Yes, Scousket. And so you're red, not blue.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And so when did you come to Australia? What?
1955. My mother migrated here as a 10-pound pom with me. In 1955, my father had died in 1952 when I was 2 years old from tuberculosis, which was fatal back then.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, 1955, we migrated to Australia and settled in Geelong.
Yeah. So you got into recording. Your technology, I think, was more important to you than music. I mean, you play piano, obviously.
I learned piano when I was a kid, about 7 years old. My mother was heavily into classical music. She was an associate of the London College of Music.
Oh, wow.
And my stepfather was a cellist. And classical music was what I
So
grew up
music
with.
was in your veins anyway.
Well, yeah, but I did piano lessons, but I wasn't very good. And then in the school band, a bit later on, I played third cornet, actually. And I don't
It's
think
such an exciting instrument, cornet.
you pay the pas of the umpas, you know.
Sorry, don't mean to offend anyone.
So, I knew I wasn't.
Yeah.
I didn't have a natural talent for music, although I absolutely loved music. I felt that.
Yeah.
But my mother brought a 78 record player with us from England. It was a valve unit. It wasn't one of the old acoustic ones, but I was fascinated by that as a kid. I discovered that if I put a pin through a cone of paper and put it on the record, that I could actually hear the sound.
Yeah,
so I was fascinated by the sound waves on the records.
So what made you do that? Put the
a fascination with how does that happen? Why is the sound coming off these records? I needed to find that out. And then when my mother married my stepfather, who was a wonderful man, he had this Grundig tape recorder. It's valve tape recorder. Dates from 1954. This one here.
Wow, this is amazing.
And it absolutely fascinated me. I just spent hours and hours playing with it and trying. I taught myself to edit tapes. I got really into it, and I wanted to know how it worked. And I think by the time I was probably 10 or 11 years old, I sort of understood bias on tape and things like that because I just started.
So technology was more important, or that's what you gravitated to, the technology of
Well, that's why I finished up in the recording industry.
Yeah.
As in the 70s, most of the recording engineers were actually technicians that came from that from that space. And so I was just so fascinated by it, but I didn't see it as a career. I never saw it as a career. It was sort of assumed I'd go to university when I finished at Geelong College, but that didn't interest me. And I saw an ad in the paper for a technician in training at the ABC in Melbourne. And I applied for that and had to sit an entrance exam, and I got into the ABC as a technician in training, which was, my mother wasn't happy about that, but
well, it's no career in being a tape operator or...
Well, but anyway, that was a 3-year training course, and I learnt, it covered television and radio, and learnt everything from camera work, lighting, and audio in television, as well as audio in radio. But I think that the thing that fascinated me the most was audio, and I was working with Harold Aspinall, who was light entertainment producer in Melbourne at that stage. Later he came over here to Perth. And am I digressing too much here?
No, please. Tell us your journey, Graham, please.
Yeah, it was how I got into the industry. It was, and I'd been tape operating on a show called the Ann and Johnny Hawker Show, which was a radio show for Melbourne ABC Radio. And Harold, I think John Hawker actually wanted to do some overdubs, some brass overdubs on, and we're working with monotape.
So how many tracks are you
Well,
talking?
in Melbourne, at the ABC, we're working with monotape.
Yeah.
So to add vocals and things like that, we'd play back that tape onto a second machine, add the vocals. So you couldn't stop and drop in or anything like that.
Crazy. What did it sound like? What?
Oh, the sound quality was great, you know, like, because we were pretty pedantic at the ABC, and I learned lots of stuff about mic technique and mic polar patterns and all of that sort of stuff. We were very, well, the ABC was quite pedantic about doing things to the rules, and it was a really good grounding.
But as you keep going on one tape, you get more noise and you get more compression, and
Yeah, the tape noise adds, but only at about, you know, your initial tape noise is from your first take. You add about 3 dB, I think, for each take after that. But it's not that.
Yeah.
The tape hiss is something that people have freaked out about, but it's really not that big a deal. It really isn't. You know, you listen to old albums now. Do you hear the tape hiss? No, you don't.
Compared to today and what's available today and how you can record today, does it?
With digital?
Yeah, has it jumped so far? Is digital, to you, is digital warmer? It's not warmer. Is the old analog thing? Is it any different to you?
I think that a lot of people have a lot of opinions that are based on prejudices. Really, good quality digital recording. I don't hear a lot of difference between that and an analog recording. A good quality analog recording done on good quality professional machines like we had at Planet. The signal to noise was so good that you really didn't hear the hiss anyway.
So is it just a person's...
And really, is it any warmer? People say analog is warmer. I don't know. I don't really perceive it myself. Is it just a person's
preference, whatever, everyone hears something different, is it?
Yeah, you know. Analog tape machines, they rolled off the bottom end, which digital doesn't do. So, you know, recording digital, you have to be a lot more careful about the bottom end because it doesn't naturally disappear like it does with analog.
So
recording.
after all that learning in Melbourne and doing all that with the ABC, you came to Perth and you met Rick Curtin and Ken Walther.
Yes, I did.
We've interviewed Ken, not Rick, and I'd love to interview Rick. He's, remember him from not such a nice guy. But so tell me about that and how you progressed through that.
Well, I came to Perth for personal reasons, family reasons. Yeah. And I didn't really think there was much of a recording industry over here, so I wasn't really looking at the recording industry particularly. I thought, but with my experience in television, because I'd done some freelance work at Channel 7 in Melbourne as well, and I was pretty experienced in television and radio, and I thought, I'll get some work in radio and television, but, they didn't want to know about me.
Great start.
and I went around the recording studios, and they didn't really want to know about me either. It was a very closed shop.
Yes.
Until one day, I think Rick Curtin might have been the engineer that was working at Planet for Kenny Walther, and Kenny rang me up and said, "Oh, my engineer's sick. Can you come in and do a session?" So I did, and everyone was blown away with the job I did. And then I started getting requests to do more and more work.
And that was at Planet?
That was at the old Planet in Murray Street.
Yeah, which was in my time the ultimate studio to go and record in.
Well, Kenny had a really nice Quad 8 mixing desk and a Lyric tape machine, which was a bit of a lemon, but I managed to get it going reasonably well, actually. It was hopelessly out of alignment when I started there, but I got it sorted out.
I think the same at Gobbles.
Kenny was not doing all that well financially, and I really became aware of that, and it was looking pretty bad, and it looked like, you know, the bailiffs were going to repossess stuff. And so I rang my mate Mike Brady and said, because Mike had at that stage had bought Flagstaff Studios in Melbourne, where I'd been working before I came over here, and Shut Up Your Face had just gone #1 around the world. He had more money than he knew what to do with at that stage.
So
and I said, "You're interested in coming into a partnership?" And I had a bit of money in the bank at that stage, and I said, "You're interested in coming into partnership in a studio in Perth?" And he went, "Oh yeah, why not?"
Yeah.
And he said, "But I want to bring my monkey along as well." It was Peter Sullivan, his musical arranger that he used to call his monkey. Nice guy, Peter, I love him. And so the three of us bought Planet off Ken. And then a couple of years later, we decided to build the new studios
1982.
1982.
Yep.
We built the new studios in Subiaco.
Because you had Simply Red, you had Dragon, you had George Thorogood, you had so many, like, that was the thing.
We had a lot of good acts.
Yeah, I was 22 then, and I remember Planet, if I could record there. Yeah.
Yeah, and we did pretty well in the early 80s. It started to dry up a bit in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
But we cracked it for the Japanese market, sort of by coincidence, really. There was a Japanese record producer came to Perth for a holiday, heard about the studio. By that stage, we'd bought the SSL console, which cost us $360,000. And the Studio 24-track machine. We had the very best equipment that money could buy. And acoustically, the studio was pretty good too. This Japanese record producer came and had a look at the studio, and then the next thing we know, we get a phone call from a record company in Japan wanting to book the studio for 6 weeks, I think it was, to record an album. And could we arrange the accommodation and all that sort of stuff? So we did. We then did quite a few Japanese albums, doing a full package deal for them with accommodation and taking them over to Rottnest and stuff like that. And so that did pretty well for us through the latter half of the 80s.
Did you ever record the Pierre de Resistance V Capri in that studio? I mean, some of those #1 hit singles, or?
Yeah, V Capri did record their #1 hit singles and their album in at Planet. Yes, the first one was "Haunting Me," I think. Was the
well, still haunts me today. That song. So what happened with Planet? So that was great because it was on the up, and the Japanese and all that sort of stuff. Because you sort of went into some debt at some time, didn't you? And
I'd gone into debt to buy the SSL and but interest rates started going up a lot.
Yeah, 18%, I think, in 88 or whatever.
I think I got up to 21% on our business loan at that point in time. So it was getting a bit expensive, and then the Japanese economy went to shit. Died in around 1990, 91.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden we didn't have any Japanese work. Everything had gone wrong for the local industry, for the Australian industry, and we were sort of struggling a bit. And I then negotiated with a Japanese company who were interested in buying the studio. I won't go into it. A lot of things went wrong in that negotiation, but anyway, I finished up basically breaking even then on selling the studios. Basically lost the money that I'd put into it, but I came out of it with not owing too much, and what I did owe I paid off afterwards anyway. So I finished up not owing anybody any money, but and they I'm not too sure how long they had the company for before they sold it. The Japanese sold it to Kevin Peake, who had shafted me earlier on a 32-track machine, which he had. I won't go into that either, but anyway, he was charged with fraud and went to jail.
Went to jail,
and then got out of jail and committed fraud again.
Yeah.
But yeah, he'd shafted me a long way. Anyway, the Japanese ended up selling the studio to Kevin Peake, and he ended up selling it to a South African guy, and then it got burnt down under strange circumstances, which was sad.
Yeah. Do you know anything about that burning down, or have they ever found anything out about that, or has anyone proved anything? Or
Nothing was ever proved, though.
Yeah.
Everybody knew.
Yeah. So, give me a few rock and roll stories, East Coast stories, because you were in the thick of things in those days. What was that like?
Oh, it was a lot of fun, actually. I started off at Armstrong Studios when it was at its peak, doing a lot of work for a lot of singles, a lot of big jingles. With the jingles were huge in those days.
Yeah.
With cigarette companies,
Yeah.
petrol companies, Coca-Cola, huge.
What about Molly
That was
Meldrum?
big stuff.
What?
I did a lot of work with Molly, and I know what you're alluding to here is when I was living in the house with Michael Gudinski.
You were living in a house of Michael.
In South Melbourne.
Yeah.
That was quite a notorious house. We had a lot of big parties in that house.
Surely no, Graham.
And there was one party, I can't even remember, it might have been after the Dr. Hook tour.
Yeah, because that was pretty big. Molly was into Dr. Hook.
I decided it was time to go to bed at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I went to bed, and about
Scoop, folks.
I don't know how long, I was just nodding off, and all of a sudden there's someone trying to get into bed with me, and it's Molly. Fuck off, Molly. Jesus. Yeah, a lot of funny things happened in that house that I don't really want to go into.
No worries, we won't go any further into that. But so you did Ez Rock album. You did that album?
Yeah, the Ez Rock, Big Red Rock album.
Yeah.
That was, I think, 1974.
Yeah.
That was. Michael said to me at that point in time, he said, "That's such a good band live," but and I don't at that stage, because Michael was on the bones of his ass at that point in time. You know, it's when he
And I
moved
think
to the
he has
house
been
with
many
me because he,
times.
didn't have.
Yeah.
And the Mushroom wouldn't have been surviving if it wasn't for all of the studio time that John French and myself were giving him at TCS Studios. I probably shouldn't say that, but he owed us a lot of money, but on top of that, we were giving him a lot of free studio time to prop up Mushroom, because Michael was a mate of ours. Anyway.
Yeah. And that worked over time, didn't it?
Yeah. Although, can't say as Michael was all that great in actually returning the favours. But the Big Red Rock album, he didn't have much of a budget. He said, I want to record them live in the studio. So we did. We recorded it in the big Studio One at Armstrong's and set up the band live and had a small PA and fallback and everything for them, and an invited audience. Couldn't see the band for the smoke in the room. It wasn't tobacco smoke. But it was quite an amazing gig. We recorded 2 nights, and then we chose the best takes of each song. Minimal overdubs. I think we overdubbed some acoustic guitars on Lady Montego, and might have done a couple of other little overdubs, but
we don't do any overdubs on this show, folks. Just to let you know.
Mostly it was live.
Yeah. So Old 55.
And let me just tell you, that was the first studio, the first album that Michael was able to sell in America.
Yeah.
And A&M Records released it.
That's where it started.
It sold very well in
American.
America.
Yeah.
They've got, I think, only got to about 32 in Australia.
But that's where it started.
It was jazz rock fusion.
Yeah.
But that album really helped Michael at that point in time. But that was closely followed by Skyhooks.
Yeah.
I did the demos for Skyhooks, played them to EMI, who rejected Skyhooks on the basis that they sang about Melbourne, and EMI was a Sydney-centric company, and Peter Dawkins said, "Nah, don't want a band that sings about Melbourne." But Michael, in the meantime, had shown interest in Skyhooks, but Ross Wilson wanted to produce them. He wanted to work with John French, and John French, what a great engineer he was.
Yeah.
And so he recorded Living in the 70s.
Great album.
About that time, I recorded. Michael asked me to record of 55, which I did at Trafalgar Studios in Sydney, which was owned by John Sayers and.
Why Trafalgar when you were in Melbourne?
Because the band was Sydney.
Yeah.
They were Sydney band, so it was cheaper to fly me to
to
Sydney and
fly the
accommodate
band
me up there. Although that album took longer than it should, and what was something I started recording in Melbourne at the same time that I was committed to, and for a little while there I was flying up and down and not sleeping because I can't remember what it was I was committed to in Melbourne, but for the last
John Farnham, was that?
No, it wasn't John. But for the last couple of weeks of all 55, anyway. But of that Take It Greasy album, that sold really well at the time. It also did really well for Mushroom. I mean, looking for an Echo set at #1 for ages.
It was massive.
And that album did really. That's probably the biggest selling album I worked on, I guess. As a solo, as a solo engineer, if you look at Sherbet and bands like that I recorded, you look at those albums, you'll see a list of about 5 engineers. Because, like I did the Life Is for Living album, I did all the guitar parts with Clive Shakespeare. But I think that the initial rhythm tracks, bass and drums were done, I think, by Richard Batchens, and I think John Sayers did the vocals, and so lots of the different engineers. A lot of those early albums we did different, and in different studios as well.
Clive Shakespeare being the guitar player, and then Harvey James came in, and Harvey James became a rep for Maton guitars, and I used to rep for CMI, so I met him in Adelaide, and he would say, "Come to my place in Glenelg," and we're at John Reynolds Music, so a shop in Adelaide, and he would say, "Follow me," and go to the pub, and he would come out the bottle shop and he'd throw 2 cans in my car, and I go, "What are they for?" And he goes, "The 2-can drive." So we go to Glenelg, but
I think that the Life album was the last one that Clive played on, and I think he left the band shortly after that.
Yeah.
So
you recorded a lot of jingles.
A hell of a lot of jingles and film tracks and TV shows. I recorded the theme for The Sullivans with Jeff Harvey, and had a stand-up row with that man. God, he was a horrible alcoholic.
Give us Barry White, Innocent Bystanders in Perth.
Barry White, that was an interesting one. Barry White, that was the first live gig that I ever did, live sound.
Yeah.
I got a call from Bruce Jackson, who was
that on the ABC?
Working for Clare Brothers.
No, was that on the ABC?
No, this was about 1974, I think, or 75. Yeah. And I got a call from Bruce, and he said, "Elvis has just called me. He wants me. I've got to go. Or Elvis's management has called me. They want me. They want me back in the States to do some more, because he was Elvis's front of house engineer, and he worked for Clare Brothers.
Well, that's amazing.
And
because Clare Brothers were the big thing then, weren't they?
Yeah. And he said, "But I'm supposed to start this Barry White and the Love Unlimited Orchestra tour." Tomorrow, and starts in Festival Hall in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And I want you to engineer it. And I went, "Bruce, I'm a studio guy. I'm not a live sound guy. Ring." And he said, "I've run all the live sound guys. No one's available."
So you got to.
He said, "You at least know how to operate a sound desk." He said, "I'll give you a quick lesson in how to line up the PA, So
you learnt pretty quickly.
I went
obviously.
down to Festival Hall, and he taught me how to line up a PA using an SM58 and a graphic equaliser. It was pretty basic. It was it was a double four-way.
You know, I was
wasn't
so
it?
glad that you had that beginning in life, because then you came to Gobbles where I was and mixed us for a couple of years.
3 years, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
great. And so that was great grounding. Then you went to Crown Casino.
I went to Crown Casino
Yeah, after Gobbles?
After Gobbles, started off mixing in the theatre there, doing shows in the theatre.
Yeah.
A lot of corporate shows that really annoyed me. I don't get on well with
Well,
corporate people.
after mixing the guitar player at Gobbles, it must have
Exactly,
been very,
exactly.
very difficult to move on to
And then, I got the opportunity to work in the cabaret lounge there, and I just thought, oh, that seems more
You've
like
made it.
that seems more like fun, this crappy little cabaret lounge, and I can have a bit of fun again and get
And
away from
our
this
generation.
corporate stuff.
I had a
Our
band called-
generation played in
Yeah,
there.
and you were mixing there. It was
Yeah.
great. That was
And that was-
unbelievable. That actual cabaret lounge
It was
unbelievable.
It was a
wasn't
great
it?
little venue, actually,
Wasn't
and I blew up a few subs in there, but it was fun. They learned and put in bigger subs for me, and then when the cab lounge closed, I took over the nightclub. Eve, what wasn't called Eve. What was it called? The Ruby Room.
Yeah, Ruby Room.
We
That's
had
right.
live bands in
Yeah,
there
yeah,
for quite
that's
a
right.
while. But then after a while, they realised they could make more money by having a DJ in there and can the live bands. And Paddy Hannon's at that stage, the Irish pub,
Yeah.
was they were having like Irish duos and stuff in there with a crappy little vocal PA that
Yeah.
kept blowing up. And I got to know Bernadette, the manager in there, and I said, let's put some real bands in here and put in a PA. And I said, I've got enough stuff lying around. Crown has enough, or Burswood as it was then, has enough stuff lying around. I can put a decent kick-ass
Yeah,
PA in here and put some bands in. So
that
we
worked.
did, and it worked.
Yeah,
That went from being a moderately successful Irish pub to being a kick-ass
So how long
live
were you
band
at
venue.
Crown?
27 years all up.
Wow.
Yeah,
Long
time.
service leave.
So, my last few years there was really just administrative work. I
Yeah.
stopped mixing. My hearing's not the best anymore, and the tinnitus gets in my brain a bit.
Sorry,
and
what
so-
was that?
And so I sort of went more into administrative
Yeah.
role, and then retired 2 years ago.
Yeah.
now.
Wow. Okay, and so what's your favourite band? Do you have a favourite band? Is it a Perth band or an Australian band and a global band? Can you?
The Beatles would have to be my favourite
Yep.
band if it wasn't for Sergeant Pepper, like that. Sergeant Pepper.
That just blew your mind.
That
whole
absolutely blew my
And
mind.
mine too. Yeah.
And I went, how have they done that? And I
Yep.
learnt that they did it on four-track machines, and it was the technology again
Yes.
of how that was recorded that blew me away.
Yeah, and that's where we get back to why you got into this, just the whole technology thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely. They would be my favourite band. I was lucky enough to work with McCartney and Wings when we recorded Wings Across Australia at the Myer Music Bowl, which was recorded for a TV special, and one of the tracks that we did finished up on the Wings Across the World album, and part of it was used in the Wings Across the World TV special. I was lucky enough to make McCartney.
So when you left England, you were born in Liverpool to come to Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So you came with your mum.
Mm-hmm.
Your dad obviously passed away. You said when you were 2. So what happened to your mum? How did she motivate you or mould you into what you became, and what was her input into all of that?
Look, my mum, I think what you're alluding to here is her time working at Bletchley Park.
Yes.
My mum, unfortunately, developed Alzheimer's disease in her later years, and
It's such a terrible disease, Graham.
it's terrible. And not long after that, I brought her over here and put her in a nursing home over here because I wanted to be near her. Because she was still in Geelong when she developed Alzheimer's.
I remember.
I brought her over here, and not long after she got into the nursing home, we got a letter from the British government saying that they'd released the papers from Bletchley Park, and my mother was to be given a medal and a certificate for her time that she did there. She had never mentioned it at all because it was top secret. She was told at the end of the war never to say what she did during the war. And so, but yes, she had worked at Bletchley, not as an actual code breaker. She was one of the many women that worked at Bletchley Park. But she was an amazing, very intelligent woman, and that the war had interrupted her musical career. But my mother didn't really like the fact that I'd gone into the music industry as such. You know, but
was that because you thought you wouldn't make any money, or?
Well, you know, she just didn't see it as a real job. I think, you know.
Isn't that funny?
Even though I was like, at the peak of the industry at that time at Armstrong's. You know,
that was massive.
And initially I didn't make good money at Armstrong's, that's for sure, because Bill, he agreed to pay me what I was earning at the ABC, which wasn't a huge amount. But within 2 or 3 years after I developed a reputation, I was able to state what I wanted.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly.
I left Bill Armstrong's as a full-time employee in 1974 when Bill sold the company to The Age newspaper.
Yeah.
And
well, The Age. No.
And they bought it and changed it into AAV, Armstrong Audio Video.
Yeah.
And Bill got a bit shafted there, and I felt for Bill, and a lot of us actually just left Armstrong's at that point in time, and I went and worked at TCS Studios for a couple of years, and then but we held a party at TCS, big party, and unfortunately it got out of hand, and the police busted it, and so we were sort of forced to resign from TCS, John French and I. So we went freelance and then charged TCS way more per hour as freelance engineers. But that was fine because it gave Channel 9, who owned TCS, they were able to say they'd got rid of the staff who held this party. That was when I first met AJ, I think, at that party as well. When I recorded Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs at the Sydney Opera House, AJ drove the van up to Sydney for us with all of the gear to record that gig. That was the first rock and roll gig done at the Opera House that Warren Morgan bashed the piano so hard the strings cut into the felts, and they had to refelt the whole piano.
Well, this is the stories you want to hear. All this, you know. So, Graham,
there's so much stuff that comes to mind, you know.
And you could tell a million of them. I know you can. Like, so, if you were stranded on a deserted island, what album would you take with you? Is there an album? You can only take one album.
It would probably be Hotel California.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, or Jeff Beck. No, probably Hotel California, I think.
Yeah. Cool. That's great. And what's your favourite band of all time? Beatles?
Yeah,
like
the Beatles,
you said before?
without a doubt, yeah.
And you know, your favourite TV show growing up? Did you have
Superman.
Superman.
Yeah, they were George Reeves. It was so kitschy, but I loved it, you know. Like you'd see the boom mic, the shadow of the boom mic.
The shadow of the boom mic. I didn't even realise that.
I used to pick up on stuff like that as a kid, you know, like and.
Oh wow.
It was, but I loved it. I just loved that. And Casey Jones. I loved Casey Jones as well. Yeah, I wanted to drive a steam train.
Casey Jones.
Yeah.
So, do you have any unfulfilled ambitions? That something that maybe you wanted to do that didn't quite work out, or?
I don't think so. I achieved more than I actually ever sort of set out to achieve. I was in the right place at the right time. I was very lucky, I think.
Yeah.
I would have liked Planet to have done better, but it was the end of the analog recording era.
Is that because Planet was more your
everything.
baby than anything else? Is that
Yes,
something
oh
that,
yeah, totally. I mean, I
Yeah.
designed those studios. I love those studios.
Yeah.
I think they were,
and we all did too, I think.
yeah. But financially it was the wrong time. So
Yeah.
I went through a bit of depression initially when I bailed out of Planet because things had gone wrong and there was some nastiness that happened. Very nasty things happened, and but I still feel like I achieved. I built what I believe was the best studio
Yeah.
in the country, and
And-
that's I wanted to do that. I wanted to build the best studio in the
Yeah.
country. I maybe did it in the wrong city, but I still think I built the best studio
Well, I
in the
don't
country.
think anyone would disagree in this room. Mark, yeah. No, it was fantastic. Like, no doubt, I don't think you've got any worries there, and I think you did very well. It's just obviously circumstances of the time, and shit doesn't happen at sometimes, and that's the way and shit happens,
Yeah,
and all that sort of stuff.
I came out of it. Yeah, I managed to get the job at Crown, which I sort of fell into, really, which
Yeah.
didn't really even apply for it. I just sort of started working there. I don't know, they asked me to work there.
27 years later.
That enabled me to survive, and I have a very successful daughter, and a beautiful granddaughter.
Yeah,
And what more could I want, really?
Yeah.
And I've
Here
got,
we go,
and I live in the
grandkids.
best.
Al's gonna he wants to wrap it up because I want to
Yeah.
talk about grandkids, because isn't it unbelievable?
It is.
Oh, and he knows his little hunts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that you got 2 grandkids, 1.
No, I've only got
Yeah.
I've only got one. Although
Yeah.
I won't go into that. I've got what I would consider step grandchildren from a previous relationship.
Yep,
that I'm still very much in touch with and that I
Yeah.
love very much. You know,
Yeah.
even though that relationship has ended, I'm still
Yeah,
sort
yeah.
of their step grandfather. You know.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. And so, do you collect anything? Tell me what you collect, Graham, apart from this sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
Cables.
Cables. What
Not
sort of
deliberately,
cables?
not deliberately, but I have got so many bloody audio cables. You wouldn't. I've got you. You need a cable to go from anything to anything. I've got one. You know. It's,
I'm going to get my wife to call you, Jackie. She knows you very well, but because she's looking for cables at times, and I don't have them.
you need some weird connector to go to some weird connector. You can bet I've got one because over the years I've gone. I'll hang on to that because I might need that one day.
Yeah.
You know, so I've got not deliberately, but I've got a heap.
You
of
just got them. So what will you put in your gravestone, Graham? It's a hard question, isn't it?
Take 3.
Take 3. What happened to take 2?
Forget that.
You just bypassed that. Okay, well, that's fantastic. Is there anything that we don't know about Graham Owens that Graham Owens wants to share with us on camera now?
Gaz, you probably know more about me than I'd want other people to know.
Yeah, come on.
At where? Channel 9.
Do you want to come
In Melbourne?
Mark, do you want to come and interview this guy?
Who did I work? What? You talking engineers? What are you talking?
Criminals.
Criminal.
Oh, criminal. Oh, you want to talk? You want to talk about Ronnie Biggs? Ron Biggs, or Ronald Brent as he was at Channel 9, he built some shelves for us at TCS Studios at Channel 9. He worked in the props department as a carpenter, and nobody knew that he was Ronald Biggs.
What, the train robber?
Yeah, Ronald Biggs, the train robber. Yeah, he worked at GTV9 in Melbourne.
He was in Australia
for years.
I thought he was in Brazil.
And he did. When they got onto him at Channel 9, they turned up at Channel 9 to arrest him. Somehow they found out that he was there. He'd gone. And
Really?
Yeah, he shot through. His wife was still, I think, where were they?
This is an amazing story.
His wife was living in Baldwin or somewhere in Melbourne, and she was still there, but he'd shot through. He disappeared. She didn't know where he'd gone, but he'd gone to Brazil.
Yeah.
But he'd worked for, I don't know,
Wow.
10 years or something at Channel 9 as a carpenter. And he was well liked by
The
everybody.
best of
Ronald
tools.
Brent, he was well liked. And yeah, we needed some shelves to put the speakers on. And so he was because we used to use the props carpenters to do stuff around the place.
Unbelievable.
And, yeah.
Got any more stories for me, Graham? Come on, there must be a few more scoops. Any Molly Meldrum or anything happening
geez.
there? Or...
Not ones I should really talk about. I can tell you some very funny stories about things that happened in the studio.
Off camera, there's a whole pile of stories. And yes, and look, so nice to have you on the show, Graham.
Pleasure, Gary. Pleasure.
Thanks for coming in, and thanks for sharing your journey, because you've certainly had a good one. And we've always, all of us, we've all looked up to you, planning everything, like your recording, your knowledge,
Thank you.
your help with everything we've done has been much appreciated. And yeah, thank you so much for coming in and sharing this with us. And we'll just talk about some of the stories that you can't.
We can talk about the No Entree tour.
Oh, the No Entree tour. Okay, that's it. Well, thank you for joining us, Graham Owens. Lovely to talk to him. Lovely to see his journey. Look, we'll see you next time in 2023 on The Profile. Thank you.